Coming up tonight on YCN News, New Hampshire Public Health Director Dr. Jose Montero talks to the public about Ebola. Vermont State Police investigate a double homicide in Townshend. And legislation for authorizing the XL pipeline fails to pass in a vote by the U.S. Senate. For more news, weather, and sports, it's time for YCN, your local view.
Now, your daily digest of the Dartmouth Lake Sunapee region, southern Vermont, and Windsor County. News, sports, weather, and all that is happening in our area. The news on YCN, your local view.
Good evening and welcome to this Wednesday edition of YCN News. I'm Rose Spillman. We begin tonight's newscast with the second part of yesterday's meeting with New Hampshire Public Health Director Dr. Jose Montero. Montero was the keynote speaker at Kearsarge Regional High School Monday night. The medical topic centered on the disease Ebola. Dr. Montero spoke to local residents at the invitation of School District Superintendent Jerry Frew. Let's join YCN's John O'Connor.
How many people are we currently following in New Hampshire?
We have been notified of a few people. We have not publicly disclosed that number, but we have been for the last couple of weeks following a few travelers with history of coming from those four countries.
And are any of those people isolated or asked to be quarantined?
No, actually they are in the low risk or negligible risk category, and so far they are healthy. And let's hope that they will continue that way.
Well, we hope so as well. If they become symptomatic, what would be the protocol?
Well, if one of them develops fever or malaise, one of the symptoms that we're looking for, certainly we will find out first and then work with a hospital close to where they are so they are notified in advance before the patient shows up. And then they will be going under a clinical evaluation, which has to include testing for Ebola infection. It may be the flu, it may be malaria, it may be something else, but we need to test them for Ebola. And when we get that result, we will move the clinical approach from there.
And so they would be, if they went in, they'd be in there for at least 72 hours?
It depends. It depends what the level of risk is, what the symptomatology is. If you have somebody with clear runny nose or something that looks like the flu or a cold, then we may think that it's a cold. And if the test is negative, we may allow them to go back home. I don't know if we will. Each case will be evaluated individually. There is no specific form that we can say everybody will fit this, because it depends the risk factors for each individual patient.
So as we look forward to this upcoming flu season, and you think about Ebola and you think about the flu, what should New Hampshire people worry about?
Get the flu vaccine. The flu is here. We already have patients. The flu kills people. In New Hampshire has done that in the past, especially elderly or young kids. So everybody should get a flu vaccine. That is a real risk in our community. That said, we as the state level will continue to plan and have a clear response to the unlikely event that somebody comes down with an Ebola infection in our state.
Beyond the State Health and Human Services website, more information on Ebola can be found at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or cdc.gov. New Hampshire lawmakers will elect on December 3rd a new Speaker of the House. 2 state reps seek that seat, which guides the direction of the 400-member House, one of the largest in the nation. In a vote that defied recommendations from other state and national leaders, Republican state reps yesterday nominated Bill O'Brien. O'Brien earlier served in that role, a role marked with controversy for the Tea Party conservative stances the Mount Vernon Republican advocated. It remains to be seen if O'Brien is re-elected. He defeated GOP colleague Gene Chandler from Bartlett for the nomination. Meanwhile, hoping to defeat O'Brien for House Speaker is Democrat Stephen Shurtleff from Pennacook. Shurtleff says if elected and as a member of the Democratic caucus, he will put the best interests of New Hampshire residents forward. Partisan politics will not be the centerpiece if he is elected by fellow lawmakers as House Speaker, Shurtleff tells NECN. Besides electing a new Speaker of the House early next month, all state reps will elect a House Clerk and House Sergeant at Arms. All leadership positions are for 2 years. Regardless who is elected House Speaker, Democratic Governor Maggie Hassan took a proactive approach upon news of O'Brien's nomination. Hassan congratulated O'Brien in a statement and pledged her support to work with legislative leaders from both parties to solve problems. Hassan says New Hampshire residents expect their elected leaders to work together to make progress for the state's economy and business climate. For the second time in several months, state police in Vermont are investigating a double homicide in Townsend. Around 9 p.m. yesterday night, police were called to a home on Abbey Lane for a reported shooting. When first responders arrived, a woman outside told police 2 men inside the home had been shot. Both men, who are not being identified at this time, were found dead by police. The woman, also not being named by police, was taken to the state police barracks in Brattleboro for questioning. Police say it appears the deaths are an isolated incident and that there is no increased concern for public safety. State police detectives are working with the Windham County Attorney's Office. A 51-year-old Hartford, Vermont man is being held on $75,000 cash or surety bail, charged by police with 4 counts of lewd and lascivious conduct with a child. John Shagru allegedly inappropriately touched 3 children under age 10 during this month. Police say the first report came to the Hartford department about Shagru touching an 8-year-old girl during a sleepover at a friend's house. As they investigated the charge, 2 more victims came forward to police, a 5-year-old boy and another 8-year-old girl. Shagru was taken into police custody Monday and scheduled to be arraigned on the charges yesterday. The investigation is ongoing, say police. When YCN News returns, legislation authorizing the Keystone XL pipeline fails to pass in a vote by the U.S. Senate, and the Lebanon, New Hampshire city budget may have a lower bottom line than last year.
The YCN News continues in a moment.
Welcome back to YCN News. I'm Rose Spillman. Mention the Keystone XL pipeline and you will get many opinions. Yesterday, by 1 vote in the U.S. Senate, lawmakers failed to pass legislation authorizing the pipeline, which would bring crude oil from Canada to refineries along the nation's Gulf Coast. New Hampshire's 2 U.S. Senators, Republican Kelly Ayotte and Democrat Jeanne Shaheen, split their votes. Ayotte voted yes, Shaheen voted no. For the record, Vermont's 2 U.S. Senators, Democrat Patrick Leahy and Independent Bernie Sanders, voted no. The vote on this issue could come up again in the U.S. House of Representatives next year. Proponents say it could mean more jobs for Americans. Opponents say the project could be environmentally risky. Turning again to news from the Upper Valley. If approved as first presented, the Lebanon city's budget bottom line will be lower than last year. Yet municipal budgets rarely are approved by voters as first presented. Even so, the proposed spending plan for 2015 by City Manager Greg Lewis is $52.7 million. In 2014, the budget came in at $63.5 million. Budget meetings will continue over the next several months before voters in spring approve all financial items. The proposed budget can be found on the city's website at lebnh.net. It's likely many people's minds are thinking more of Thanksgiving next week than city budgets. Vermont State Police say an important matter should be also on folks' minds. Across the Green Mountain State, police will conduct a Click It or Ticket campaign. Wear your seatbelts when traveling to eat or shop during the start of the busy holiday season, remind police. The campaign begins next Wednesday through Sunday, November 30th. It will be easier to get there from here per a resolution passed by the Claremont City Council last week regarding its Amtrak train stop. The City Council voted unanimously to fund $1,300 so that a bus from Community Alliance Transport can include a stop at the River Road train site. This will begin December 1st through June 30th, 2015. The Board of Community Alliance Transport is chipping in $700 to make this possible. The money will be used so that the bus can include on its route a stop in the morning at the train stop. When YCN News returns, we'll hear from Kearsarge Chronicles' Lynn Solomon, who met with Carmen Urick from Jensen and Urick Home.
The YCN News continues in a moment.
Welcome back to YCN News. I'm Rose Spillman. Now Matt McDonald will have a look at our weather for the next few days and then move on to sports.
Thanks, Rose. Tonight we'll have lows in the 20s with increasing clouds and winds around 5 miles per hour. Tomorrow will be partly sunny with a high of 35 degrees and winds up to 10 miles per hour. Tomorrow night you'll have partly cloudy skies with winds around 10 miles per hour and lows in the teens. Friday will have winds between 10 and 15 miles per hour with mostly sunny skies and a high of 31 degrees. Friday night will be mostly clear with lows around 15 degrees. Snowstorms are expected to miss our area. We should have cloudy to sunny skies into Friday. Now let's see what's coming up on our community calendar. Tomorrow night in New Hampshire, the Lebanon Opera House will host John Hodgman at 7:30 p.m. Remember, you can submit local events from your community by sending them to news@ycnnow.com. Now let's take a look at Manchester Monarchs hockey. It was a home game for the Monarchs as they took on Worcester today at 10 o'clock. In the first period, Manchester scored a point with a nice shot from Zach O'Brien. Now at 1-0, Manchester's Brian O'Neill scores another point for the team. However, Worcester Sharks player Evan Trupp countered with a shot and score on goal. O'Neill got revenge and less than a minute afterwards he scores. In the third period, the Monarchs continued with the scoring. Colin Miller makes a nice shot on goal, and the last point of the game was scored by Kevin Gravel. The final score was 5-1. This nice win increases the Monarchs' record to 11 wins and 4 losses. Their next game is away at Binghamton on Friday. The game begins at 7:05 p.m.
Thanks, Matt. When YCN News continues, we'll join Capital Connections' John O'Connor, who met with Chris Gamache, Director of New Hampshire Trails.
The YCN News continues in a moment.